Hey folks, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Ed Talk. So today I'd like to do a reaction video on the real reason for marriage. And this one again is by Jordan Peterson. Let's get into it.
That's actually why people get married, just so you know. Because this is built into marital vows. I'm not leaving ever, no matter what. It's like, okay, well, that definitely puts a boundary around our arguments.
Exactly. If you have that conviction in your mind before you get married and when you get married, then you will never break up. You will keep that marriage strong no matter what. But it has to be a heart condition. Okay? You have to have that heart condition from the very beginning. I also feel that there are other powers that need to go into that conviction, a higher power, a spiritual power, because we can't take the weight of all the problems that come with marriage by ourselves. We need help every day. We take it upon ourselves to only try and tackle these marital problems that we get along the way. We will fail. So you need more than just yourself and each other to make it through a marriage. All right.
Right? Because I can't say every time you manifest one of your flaws, which you're likely to do just as often as me, well, enough of this. It's like, that's horrible, man. If your whole life is, well, every time you get out of line, I'm out of here. It's like, how the hell are you? First of all, you're not going to admit to ever doing anything wrong. Second, you're going to be on you're like a scared cat the entire relationship because, well, who knows? It could just come to an end at any moment. It's like, people say, well, if the possibility of divorce is open, it makes you free. It's like, yeah, that's what you want. You want to be free, eh? Really? Really? So you can't predict anything. That's what you're after. It's a vow. And it says, look, I know that you're trouble. Me too. So
Okay, so yeah, it's a vow. It's a covenant that you make between yourself and God, and between each other. When you become married, you become one flesh. You separate yourself from your parents and with anything else anybody else has to say. You separate yourselves. You have to do that. All right? That's the only way you're going to keep your marriage strong. All right?
we won't leave no matter what happens. Well, that's a hell of a vow, but that's why it's a vow, right? That's why you take it in front of a bunch of people. That's why it's supposed to be a sacred act. It's like, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? Everything is mutable and changeable at any moment. Well, go ahead. You live your life like that.
Exactly. Everything is mutable and changeable at any moment. In a world full of noise, materialism, fakeism, um, you know, just with all that's going on around us on a daily basis, it is easily to go astray from a good thought to a bad thought. So don't let the noise get to you when it comes to your marriage. Always be thinking about the next best thing that you can do to make it better. The next best thing that you can do to make your relationship better. This advice doesn't just apply to marriages. Now, I've been married 35 years, and I say that proudly because we had a lot of rough times. But you just know that when you find your soulmate, you will do what needs to be done to keep them, to make it work. All right, here we go.
See what you're like when you're 50. Jesus, it's dismal. 2 or 3 divorces, your family's fragmented, you've got no continuity of narrative. It's not good for the kids, not by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's a form of voluntary.
Let's go back to that. Kids, growing up in a really bad neighborhood on the Lower East Side at the time that the neighborhood it's still called Hell's Kitchen. And we were very poor. We had nothing. But what we had was love in our family. And I always used to analyze, even at the tender age of 8 or 9 years old, um, my father's commitment to my mother. I saw that. I analyzed it. And even though it may not have been at the time as important or, you know, real significant, I saw it subconsciously. It was going into my head. It was going into the back of my head. And finally, to the back of my head, down to my heart. To my heart. So, how you treat your marriage today plays a huge role on how you were brought up. I truly believe that. If I saw my father every day treating my mother the best, to the best of his ability, treating her the way a man should treat a woman, or a woman should treat a man. It works both ways, guys. Okay? When I saw this, it was those tender moments that made me think this is the way I need to be. Not just to your wife, but to treat people generally speaking. How you should just treat people. You used to always say, treat people the way you'd want to be treated. That's very true. And it certainly applies to the person you love. So let's move on.
Enslavement, I suppose, but it's also equivalent to the adoption of a responsibility. And there's more to it than that. If you can't run away, then you can solve your problems. Because it might be, okay, well, I'm stuck with you. So how about we fix things? Because the alternative is we're going to be in a boxing match for the next 40 years. That's the alternative. So, and you think you're going to fix problems without something like that hanging over your head? There isn't a chance. You'll just avoid them because that's what people do. It's really hard to solve problems, especially in a relationship. We're having a fight and I find out that it's, because you were abused by your uncle when you were 5 or some goddamn thing. It's like, it's very frequent that sort of thing happens. There's your partner's, manifesting some weird anomalous behavior.
Listen, you get married, you're always going to marry into some kind of, lack of a better term, baggage. Okay? We all have baggage. We all have a history. Whether, I'm a man and I had 10 girlfriends growing up when I was in high school to, up until the point I got married, or you're a woman who had, 3 or 5, marriages, whatever. We all have baggage. We got to set that baggage aside. We got to set everything aside and just give each other that second chance in life. Okay? You got to look at the person for what they are at face value. And you need to start anew. Okay? We're imperfect. We're not perfect. If you're looking to marry perfect, trust me when I say the perfect body, those perfect moments, they're not going to last forever. So keep that in mind when you think about marriage, because it's more than always having that perfect person. It's dealing with that person with their changes over time, both of you. Okay? You're going to have changes physically and mentally. And when you're feeling at 50%, the other person is there to build it back up to 100 and vice versa. All right, let's move on.
You just can't make heads or tails of it. It doesn't seem related to what you're doing at all. They don't want to talk about it. And so as soon as you bring it up, they get mad. And then you bring it up again, they even get madder and they tell you that you're not going to talk about that or they're going to leave. And so maybe you're really, really persistent because you're kind of a son of a bitch, and then they break down and cry.
You don't talk like this unless you've lived it. We can all relate to that, right? This back and forth with you and your wife, and these moments that you get into, these little disagreements, these arguments, and honesty is everything in a marriage, guys. Everything. So anyway.
And then they have this horrible memory that comes flooding forward that's completely, you don't know what to do with it, and then you have to sort it out. It's like, you think you're going to do that unless there's a good reason? you have to know we better sort this out, or we're going to be carrying it around for the next 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe is enough motivation so you'll actually try hard to solve a problem. It's a lot easier to say, well, sorry, we're not going there.
Makes me think that when you're married, you're starting new. New life, new everything. Leave the past behind. I know there are some pasts that couples have become victim to, and it's hard to get away from. But when you bring a moment from the past into a relationship, it makes it so much more harder for the person trying to make it work. Um, and I guess all I could say about that is that if there's something that your spouse does wrong that you just hate it, something silly, stupid, because that's what a lot of these arguments seem to be about these days, but something silly, and then you bring it up later. Well, hey, you remember when you did that? No, that's not what you want to do. You want to leave the past in the past. Because all that's going to do is bring up, these feelings that you don't want to bring up. I know some people may disagree with this. Well, we need the past in order to have a better future, so we can learn from the past. I think there are some things you do within reason, you say within reason, but not out of spite because you want to make it better. So if you do bring something up, it's because you want to make it better, not because you want to, say or do one of those "I told you so's" to someone that you love. All right, let's move on.
But then, good, you'll have it every day, every goddamn day for the rest of your life. See, there's some additional problems with divorce that people don't really grasp when they're young. Like the idea that you can be divorced once you have children, that's kind of a stupid idea because you can't. You can you can you can find a limited substitute for your initial freedom. But if you have kids and you try to get divorced, the probability that that's going to demolish your life is very, very high. First of all, it's incredibly expensive. So one or both of you is going to come out of that poor. And your market value has declined. Let's say you're the woman who takes the kids. Your market value has declined radically. You're going to be poorer. The man, he's just as screwed because he is now an indentured servant and there's no escape from it. So it's not so bad if you can negotiate a peaceful separation, and some people can, but lots of times if you have a terrible relationship, it's not like negotiating a peaceful separation is all that easy. But if you're at each other's throats, good luck to you.
Yeah, there are people that I know who simply stay in a marriage based on convenience. Like the love has been broken, nothing is there, and they're there based on convenience. And what I mean by that is, you know, you've you've gotten married, you've together, you've built a home, you've got assets, you've got equity into it, you put a lot of time and effort into the marriage. And so if you're thinking of separating from someone that you love simply because you found somebody else that you want to share your life with, you better make damn sure that you're leaving them not because you're bored, right? But because there's something deeper that's going on that's much more abusive and that I feel in that relationship that would warrant you leaving it without working it out. I don't think there isn't a marriage you can't work out without any kind of spiritual help in your life. Because once you break the covenant, you get married to somebody else, you're on cloud nine all over again. You got all these endorphins that are building up and you're excited. What have you done? You've destroyed a family that you've kept together for so long this unity simply over your feelings for something or someone else. We've all seen it. Our friends, we have friends maybe who have done that and have regret leaving their spouses or their relationship because of this. Have a clear mind. The heart is treacherous. Okay? A lot of times as men, we think with our minds. Oh, I'm sorry, we think with our hearts instead of our minds, right? We go with our libido and we follow that. We think about what we want. But you have to not let this get in the way, and you have to think about your next move. Like chess, marriage is a game of chess. Sometimes you have to plan forward how you want to make it great. Not just better, but great. Okay.
I think it's roughly equivalent to having non fatal cancer. It is not pleasant. It's a 10-year process, 15-year process. It'll cost you $250,000 and it'll tear a big chunk out of your life. And also, it will really disrupt your relationship with your kids. And you bring kids into a step parent family, they do not do as well. Step parents are not as good parents as biological parents, and the data.
I know the data shows differently, but I disagree with him. I have a brother, got he adopted this family into his life, married the woman who had a young boy, and the boy later in his years went through the court system to have my brother as his adopted father, real father, I guess. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but yeah, he was so taken, he was so moved by my brother's kindness and the years that he had taken care of them in the way that a father should, that he wanted him to be his real father and not the absentee father that didn't even come close to what my brother did for this young boy and his mother that he married. Okay.
From that is clear. Now, obviously, there are exceptions because there are terrible biological parents and there are wonderful step parents. But if you look in aggregate, it's not that easy to care for children. You need everything you can binding you to them. And if there's someone else's children, mostly they get in the way of the person that you love, right? Well, let's say you have a child, I'll be right out. Let's say you have a child and I want to go out with you. Every second you spend with that child is the second you don't spend with me. And there's going to be a price for that. I'm not going to be happy about that. And if I have a child, you're going to feel exactly the same way. You might say, well, no, I love children. It's like, yeah, sure you do. I doubt it. You might love your child. And it's pretty specific the way that people love children. So, and the rate of abuse for kids in step-parent families is way higher than it is in biological families. There's not even any comparison.
Okay. So, yeah, that was really good. Every time I hear Jordan Peterson talk about these matters, I always become so impressed by how he puts it into perspective. Okay, so what I did was I put together a few things about what the Bible says about marriage. And so one of the things I came across is when you get married, it talks about those vows to yourself, but it also, it's a covenant between you and God, a lifelong covenant, not a forever, because we don't live forever in this system, but a lifelong covenant. If you want to look and see where it talks about that scripture's in Malachi 2:14, if you're interested. It involves vows and promises made with God as a witness. God as a witness. He's your witness, right? So, what better witness And that's so profound. I think about that. You stand in a place full of people who witness you getting married and saying your vows. But did you know that a power much bigger than ourselves is watching over this moment as a witness as well? Now that I revisit that, I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Crazy. It's almost makes you want to cry. All right. One flesh, one union. And Genesis 2:24 talks about um, how a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined with his wife. That's so important, guys, because here's the thing. In today's climate, people get married every day. But how often do they take advice from people at work or follow the advice from people at work or friends around them as to what they should do? You need to separate yourselves from all the negativity that tells you what that they think you should do to keep your marriage strong. I'm sure there's some good advice. You utilize that with judgment, but you need to separate yourselves from the gossipers and the negativity. And you need to just focus on the one that you love. And this applies for a relationship too. You need to focus on that and make that work. Talk to your husband, talk to your wife. Jordan Peterson says you should have at least 90 minutes a week of intimate time. I think it should be a lot more than that. But imagine if you set aside 90 minutes of no phone, no interruption, no nothing, and just have a conversation with your wife. In my last video that I will put, my first video that I'll put in the description, I talk about how I love going for walks with my wife. It doesn't matter where. I will tell her, hey, let's go for a walk. I'm going to go pick up some garbage along the side of the road and put it in a bag. Would you like to walk with me? She'll say yes. Because she knows I want to spend time with her. This is a selfless act of unconditional love. You don't need money to have a good time, and you don't need money to go to the park. You don't need money to go for a walk. These are things that bond a relationship and draw you closer to God and to each other. Um, mar- Marriage was an institution created by God, and it talks about that in Genesis 2:18. And how selfless of an of a person or an entity can you be to say that, well, I'm going to go ahead and create man, but I don't want them to be alone. I'm going to use my powers to also create a woman for them where they can complement each other. That's something to really think about, isn't it? This is why we need to give our glory to something higher than just ourselves. Um, and that's what he wanted for us in the Garden of Eden. He wanted for us to multiply on earth, to be fruitful. But he also gave us choice, right? God gave us choice, and things didn't work out the way that they should, and that's why we're here today. Now, some of you, I don't want to be real theological about things, but I'm just telling you that we need more than just ourselves to rely on. In this system, the way things are with relationships, we need a manual to help us through. Sure, you can pay all this money for marriage counselors and therapists, And at some point, they do have their place. Um, but you need something even higher than that. So that's why I think that scripture plays a role in marriage, having something higher than ourselves to help us get through the next day. Not just in marriage, but in everyday life. There's so much noise in this on this earth and all around us. Work, pain, work, disease, jobs, people at the jobs, um, all these hardships that are happening around us, all the things that we see that are happening out in the world. There's a lot of noise out there that can distract us from each other to help grow that family unity. And that's what we don't want. We don't want that noise. We want to try and eliminate that as much as possible. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, and it doesn't matter if you're poor. Because one thing rich people have in common with poor people, and poor people have in common with rich people, is that we all go through the same problems when we're married. Because we're human. Uh, there's purpose in a companionship. You have purpose. It was it was instituted, and it's an institution by God, right? Um, you have mutual support. You have a shared reason as to why you want to move forward with the person you love. In my first episode, I mentioned how um, I I asked my wife if she would go to Vegas with me. She does not like Vegas, but I tried to make it so that she could like it. I told her, look, I just want to spend time with you, and I really like Vegas. I don't go to gamble. I just like to go there because I'm from back east. I like the action. I like staying at the New York hotel, and it's got a lot of fun, New York themes to it, and the food is great. So we went. But before we went, I made an effort to you know sign up to go to or get a couple tickets to a nice show, and we went to a nice place to go eat, and we had a great time. I also brought a cooler with us, put some sandwiches in it so we can save money once we got to the hotel. So we didn't go and spend a lot of money on Vegas. We didn't waste a lot of money like a lot of people seem to do. My whole thing was just to go there alone with her for 2 days and just walk around a little bit, spend some time together, get up and have that coffee, talk. It was fantastic. I would love to do it with her at least two, 3 times a year. Anyway, let's move on. Um, Faithfulness and commitment. God hates divorce, and I know there are many of us who are going through the possibility of a divorce, and we don't want that. A lot of people that are going through divorces who don't want that. Now, you could be wanting a divorce for different reasons. I'm not going to sit here and stand on my virtual signal pedestal and say, well, don't get one. It's not the right thing to do. No. What I'm going to say is what's it over? What's the divorce, or what's this situation? Why is this situation leading to that? What can you do in your relationship to make it work? Now, if it's an abusive relationship, physical or mental, that's not what we're here for. But let's say you have a thing for your receptionist at work, or you have a thing for somebody at work, or feelings, and you feel that you are wanting to destroy a marriage over something as stupid as that, then you need to reevaluate. You need to reevaluate what you're doing. I'm in my late 50s. I've been married to my wife 35 years. I've known her for over 12. We met at 11 years old. She was the one. I'm not going to say I didn't have my cake and eat it over the course of time, over the first part of my years before we got married, but it was a different time. And someday I'd like to get into that story with you, and tell you how we met and where I'm from and all that good stuff. So, anyway, all for now. Thank you for watching. If this video has had any impact on you, all I would ask is you hit the like button, maybe subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.